It's your Tuesday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back for another day. Hope everybody's having a great day out there today. Published this one just a little bit later than usual because I put up a special episode this morning featuring some great work our Marcus Fuller and Cassidy Hedesheimer did on a special edition podcast spotlighting 10 high school athletes, 10 seniors who are expected to sign this week on signing day. So we got that going earlier, so check that out. And obviously you're checking this one out too, so appreciate all of that. Good regular show right here. Andrew Krammer from the Star Tribune joins me in a little bit to talk Vikings, reviewing the film from that 12-7 win over Jacksonville. A weird game in a lot of ways. One the Vikings can certainly learn from, one they probably won't want to watch over and over again for aesthetic value, but certainly one that we can learn from. Sam Darnold hopefully can learn from as well. Vikings poetry. After that, the only way to properly express yourself after a 12-7 win is 4 haiku poems with my good friend Keith Rashat. We'll get to that later in the episode, and a Lynx story at the end of the show as well. Some key departures from that organization. First, though, what did I miss? Vikings fans haven't really needed schadenfreude this year. They're good at it, but they haven't really needed it. Vikings are 7-2. They tend to go that direction when things aren't going well for the Vikings. But had they needed it this year, it would be there in abundant supply. I was thinking about that as I read an ESPN piece, long ESPN piece on 4 NFL coaches on the hot seat. It goes through, number 1, starting with the Bears, who a lot of Vikings fans love to hate. I thought maybe this was the Bears' year. I thought Caleb Williams, with all those weapons around him, could maybe make this a Bears season to remember. Instead, they started 4-2, looked like they were kind of finding the rhythm. It's all gone downhill since then, including a 19-3 loss to the Patriots this past weekend. They're 4-5. Everyone's mad at Matt Eberflus. He's probably going to get fired. I don't know if it's going to be a mid-season firing, but the Bears are in the tank. Vikings get to play them twice still, by the way. That is a nice thing for them. Their offense is a mess. They got to get someone in there that's going to help out Eberflus. They're going to help out the Bears, turn this thing around, help Caleb Williams become the quarterback they hope he can be, because this is the Bears' best shot at a franchise quarterback in a long time. They don't want to mess it up with the wrong coaching staff, but there's one on the hot seat. Then you have the Cowboys, who a lot of Vikings fans hate as well. A lot of people don't like the Cowboys. Quote-unquote America's team, but that brings a lot of hate as well. Coached by former Packers coach Mike McCarthy, defensive coordinator, former Vikings coach Mike Zimmer, who hasn't exactly endeared himself to the masses here since he left. A terrific Mark Craig story earlier this year where he kind of went scorched earth on things as he left. The Dallas not having much success this season. They're a mess. They're probably not going anywhere fast. Be curious to see if Jerry Jones has the patience to stick through another year of Mike McCarthy on an expiring contract. I don't think so, but we will see how that goes. And my favorite subplot with the Cowboys, by the way, Jerry Jones, their owner, taking questions about the glare. I think it was CeeDee Lamb missed a touchdown pass because he couldn't see. Apparently in these 3:25 starts in Dallas during the late fall, the sun shines through their stadium in such a way that it's almost impossible to see. They've complained about this for years. They want curtains put up, things like that. Jerry Jones is defiant about it, saying, no, we know where the sun's going to be. We've known for a year exactly where the sun's going to be. We don't need to do anything about it. Why don't we just tear down the stadium if you're so upset about it? I think I went on a weird little rant about it, so this has become a thing. Apparently at Mike McCarthy's news conference just the other day, they have a shield up to protect the sun from glaring on him. So reporters were noticing that and saying, what a novel concept. Here's something you can do to keep the sun out of people's eyes. It was kind of comical. Things are going sideways for Dallas, and I don't think Vikings fans mind that. Jacksonville coach Doug Peterson was the next one on the hot seat. Not really Vikings specific, but the Vikings did just beat Jacksonville. We saw how bad they are. And hey, I don't think Vikings fans are too sad to see Doug Peterson having a tough time given how things went for them in the NFC title game in 2017. The last one on that list is the Giants. Brian Daboll, of course, his claim to fame was basically beating the Vikings in the 2022 playoffs. They give Daniel Jones that big extension after that. He hasn't done anything since then. He got hurt. He's been bad this year. They are going nowhere fast. They look terrible. And the coach that's not on the hot seat is Robert Saleh from the Jets. Already got fired, probably because of Aaron Rodgers and his underperformance. Rodgers blaming lack of energy on their loss the other day. They lost 31-6 to the Cardinals. I think Boomer Esiason ripped Aaron Rodgers. The Jets are a mess. Aaron Rodgers is a mess. If you are a Vikings fan, you can say Aaron Rodgers is having a hideous year. The Bears are having another hideous problem getting their quarterback going. The Cowboys are failing. The team you just beat is failing. And the team that beat you 2 years ago in the playoffs, you basically set their franchise back by losing that game. So it's been a good year for Schadenfreude if you need it, Vikings fans, which, of course, you really haven't because the Vikings have been awfully good. It's film review time here on Daily Delivery. Michael Rand, Andrew Krammer with me. Andrew, how are you? Did you manage to get through that 12-7 win?
I did, somehow better than Mac Jones, incredibly.
I think there was a point last year where I was like, should they trade for Mac Jones when they were kind of like desperate for quarterbacks and it was clear that he was going to be out of the picture in New England? I no longer have the hankering for Mac Jones.
Yeah, it was just his first start in quite a while, but in that Jacksonville team, there's not a whole lot around him. But he didn't look good. I didn't realize this until the end of the game, but that last drive when obviously they crossed midfield and before throwing the pick in the end zone, that was just the second time the entire game they'd gotten into Vikings territory. Yeah, it was amazing.
It was bad. I've got some hot takeaways for you, 3 of them to be exact, and then we'll get into the film review. Hot takeaway number 1. Now, I know what Kevin O'Connell said after the game, that his confidence in Sam Darnold hasn't wavered, that he didn't think about anything in that game, even though he threw those 3 picks. I think there's a decent chance J.J. McCarthy would be starting next week if he was healthy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't think it's too spicy because J.J. McCarthy had been on a trajectory that we all saw in August it seemed to be like it was going to be pretty awesome coming off that preseason game and them expecting to get him some first-team work in those Cleveland joint practices. If he would have continued on that trajectory, we would certainly be at the point where those questions are valid. Sam Darnold has now thrown 5 interceptions in the last 2 games. He had thrown 5 in the first 7 games of this season, and none of those 5 were in the same game. So he had at least been not, compounding his errors. And you just go back and watch that game. It was more than just, we'll talk about it, but yeah, it was more than just the interceptions, Mike. So I don't think that's too spicy. I think at this point, people would be clamoring for JJ. Now, look, they're 7-2, and that's something that Kevin O'Connell would have to contend with. It is an interesting hypothetical considering that they won, and they've won 2 games in a row, but those 2 games have not been Sam Darnold's best.
No, and, considering the other options right now are Nick Mullins and Brent Rippon, he's not going to make a move. Like Sam Darnold is clearly the best healthy quarterback in the room, and he's played pretty well. I mean, you can give him the benefit of the doubt. Even in that Colts game, he made enough big plays, threw 3 touchdown passes that you could forgive some of the mistakes. This was the first game all year where you were like, oh man, he almost single-handedly cost them the game with his poor decision making in the red zone, and they got away with it because they're playing Jacksonville. But I feel like they would be tempted at least if they had a better option than what they have right now. I think KOC's got to say what he says right now because there's just not really another option right now.
Yeah, it was telling that he didn't wait for his press conference. He said it in that post-game speech that the Vikings post online every time. And he's giving out game balls. He gives one out to every defender. He gives one out to each specialist. And then at the end says on offense, we'll get better. And then makes a point to say, Sam, everybody in this locker room knows that you're the guy who's going to get us there. So I feel like you got to speak it into existence at this point. You don't say that unless there's any reason for doubt. And yeah, that was easily Darnold's worst game as a Viking.
Second hot takeaway. His overall numbers are
pretty good, not too far off of where he usually is, but Justin Jefferson hasn't been in the end zone either any of the last 3 games. He's been getting, blanketed all over the field. I think Justin Jefferson's got to be getting a little frustrated with the direction things are going. What do you think?
Well, they're winning, and that's what he says he cares ultimately about, and I tend to believe him. There's been no indication publicly or privately that he's making an issue behind the scenes. So as long as they're winning, he'll be okay with it, but that he's wise enough to know what is winning football against, playoff caliber teams, and they didn't play that on Sunday, certainly not on offense. So we see Jefferson get frustrated when they're losing. And I wouldn't say it's just when he's not getting the ball. It's not just regarding his role. So as long as they're winning, things are going to be fine. And even if they lose, Jefferson also has a 10,000 foot view enough, having just signed the contract extension, to know that JJ McCarthy is going to be the guy moving forward for this team. I think we can put to bed any talk of would Sam Darnold supersede the JJ McCarthy plan at this point. And JJ knows, or Justin Jefferson, that JJ, he knows that. So I think that's something that would at least put his mind at ease. But for this year, like you said on the first hot take, Mike, it's all Sam Darnold, and even Jefferson knows because he's played with Nick Mullins. I don't know how much you need to go back to that.
Yeah, I mean, his numbers like 53 catches, 831 yards, 5 touchdowns. Like he's putting up typical Justin Jefferson numbers, like a little bit lower than it was on the pace last year, a little bit lower than 2022, but he's still, on pace to get 100 catches, 1,600 yards, 9 or 10 touchdowns. It's not like he's having a subpar year. It just feels like I expected him to be open a little bit more, especially in the last 2 games with Hawkinson coming back. With all the weapons they have now, it still doesn't seem like there's any relief for him.
Well, I think Sam Darnold is leaving meat on the bone. I mean, when you watch this back, it's not just that there's tight coverage, which the Jaguars did play well in coverage on Sunday. We should commend that. This was a defense that was pretty awful going into the game, and they managed to shut down a Vikings running game that up front just gave you nothing for the most part. Cam Akers was bad when he stepped in for Aaron Jones, so then it lent toward them taking away the passing game. But there were moments in that game where Justin Jefferson's coming open, or Jordan Addison for that matter, where Sam Darnold is scrambling instead of standing in the pocket against moderate pressure that he could have survived through. There's just things that have got to irk Kevin O'Connell beyond the interceptions for Sam Darnold. There's just things he's missing. He's not giving plays full chances. He's the pocket presence, the clock in his head, all of that is just definitely not a complete or in cement formed person yet at this point. Week to week, it's so inconsistent. So I think for Jefferson's point, to your point, if Kirk Cousins were running this offense, he might be producing even more than he already is, which is a credit to how they're coaching this and how Sam Darnold has tried to force him the ball because, he's obviously the focal point.
Last one, they got to consider a change at right guard. Ed Ingram's just not working. I know they, took a pretty high pick on him in 2022 as their last hope for that, for that class, but man, it's just not been good.
It was really bad on Sunday, and I felt like going into the bye week after that Jets game, after when they were 5-0, that was the time where people were talking about it the most. And coming out of that bye week, Ingram had played adequately, not, totally replacement level. But this past week, I thought against the Jaguars was one of his worst games of the season. And it wasn't just in pass protection. He was better in pass protection. It was more of the run game where he just wasn't sticking to guys. He had some bad matchups that he was consistently losing to up front. And when you have an offensive line that needs to help its new left tackle or wants to help the other guard from time to time, it's really hard to help out your one weakest link all the time. And when he's left alone, he's a consistent liability. So to me, Mike, that's not a super hot take. I happen to agree with it. The only question is for the coaching staff is how much faith do they really have in Dalton Reisner, who they've seen a lot of. The NFL has seen a lot of. He was a 4-year starter at left guard for Denver. He started 11 games last year at left guard for the Vikings, and they loved it so much they replaced him with Blake Brandel this offseason and made Reisner a backup. So they clearly don't view Reisner as this some kind of world beater. If there was any kind of backup that you had a ton of faith in, you would have probably already made this change at this point. It seems to me like the Vikings are chasing development with Ingram, which for a third-year guy, you could say good on them for not totally giving up on him yet. But at the same time, it's approaching 50 starts in those 3 years. You've seen a lot of football from this guy. And I think if the change isn't coming soon, it speaks really lowly of how they view Reisner. And I would imagine this next offseason, they maybe finally address that spot or at least turn the carousel one more time.
Andrew, what do we make of the 3 Darnold interceptions? I mean, the offense is the focal point after this game. The kicking game, which should have been the weak link, right? With 2 out of 3 new players in the operation. They kicked 4 out of 4. It's kind of one of the reasons they won. The defense obviously was huge. 3 turnovers in the fourth quarter, 7 points allowed in the whole game. Offense dominates. They've got the ball for like 42 minutes. Can't get it in the end zone. 3 turnovers in Jacksonville territory. What the Darnold interceptions, were those bad decisions, just bad throws? What do we make of those?
To me, the one in the end zone, the back to JJ, the last one, that was just a bad throw. I mean, you got to make that throw more accurately, better. He had a similar one last week against the Colts. Yeah, Sooner, excuse me. Yeah. He had a similar one against the Colts last week where he's trying to high point it to TJ Hawkinson to the back of the end zone and just throws it directly to the Colts standing right there in front of him. It was just a bad accuracy, not where you want that ball to be placed. So that was, in terms of just bad outcome, that was just bad fundamentals, bad accuracy. The other ones to me were just bad decisions. The first one to JJ, it's just a basic quick in cut, almost a slant type route. There's just draped man coverage. It was even a press alignment where the Jaguars corner, Tyson Campbell's right up at the line in JJ's face. And I get it. You're going to trust JJ to shake him, come free on the slant or the quick in. But there was nothing within that route, if Darnold was staring it down as it looked, that told you, yeah, I should be pulling that trigger. That's also not a situation where I'd expect you to want to give your guy, quote unquote, a chance. Because when you've got a corner in interior position and you're throwing an interior cutting route, you're just not going to win that a ton of times. At best, that ball is knocked to the turf. This time it gets popped up into an interception. So that was a bad decision. The other one, if I remember correctly, was a deep ball that ended up getting picked off correctly. Right. I'm not, there's 5 over the last 2 weeks. So I'm blurring these, but
yeah, there's the 2. There's the one to Jefferson that was short, then there was the one, I think, another one in the end zone that was just bad. I feel like the 2 in the end zone, or the 2 that were in the red zone, were bad throws to me.
Yeah, yes, and the one certainly to Jefferson on the shorter one, to me, was the worst decision he made because JJ was just absolutely draped. So yeah, I just think overall there's a blend of issues that are coming up with Darnold, and the ones that are even going through my head, there are other ones. Ronald Darby sat on a deep over route by TJ Hawkinson and nearly picked a ball off that should never have been thrown by Sam Darnold in the first quarter. And that was one where he had underneath guys. Aaron Jones was just standing there on a little hook route wide open. That's an example where Kevin O'Connell's talked about, don't always hunt the big play, be mindful of when we need to check it down. And you just see that dial spin in Darnold's head where on a given play, his rhythm and timing aren't always there. And that could very well be still rhythm and chemistry in a new offense that is still new to him this year. It could be the fundamentals that he's getting hammered on in terms of quiet feet, not bouncing in the pocket, because you see that arise when he gets uncomfortable. It could be the pressure and him not being comfortable with the line that's changed in front of him. There are so many different factors, but it all leads to Darnold in his mind and what Kevin O'Connell is trying to coach through right now. And on Sunday, he could never get into a comfortable place, it felt like.
The running game produced some yards. Aaron Jones had a statistically pretty good game, but he gets banged up again. They try some Cam Akers. He's kind of hit or miss. They try even some Chandler at the end of the game or for a series, try to get him going. What's the state of the running game right now?
Yeah, they better hope that Aaron Jones's ribs are healthy because it was pretty rough with Cam Akers. Cam played not too much, but he had to replace them there in the second half. But when he came into the first half, it wasn't until the end of the first quarter. Aaron Jones had played 20-some snaps by that point, and they tried to give Akers an entire series. And after back-to-back missed reads, including one where he tried to bounce it outside and one where it was a straight downhill gap play where the hole is right there, and he just inexplicably cuts it to the left and misses the hole entirely. He gets pulled and Aaron Jones gets put back into the game. I mean, that's the kind of thing these coaches are dealing with when we say, give Aaron Jones a breather. Well, every time they try to, the guy who comes in, whether it's Ty Chandler or now Cam Akers, has some errors like that. And they saw that last year with Alexander Madison and Akers when he was also the guy. So to me, there's really nothing from those guys, Chandler, Akers, that you're seeing that should say, as a coaching staff, should give you confidence of like, yeah, we can let Aaron rest. Like, no, they need him to be healthy if they want any semblance of a running game, because not only do you need guys just to properly hit the hole, there are missed blocks all the time. In every rushing offense, there are missed blocks. But in this one, there seems to be a higher percentage of inconsistency up front in the run game under Kevin O'Connell. It seems to be just consistent in the 3 years under him. So with that, Aaron Jones has been this magic eraser for them in the run game in a way that nobody else has been under O'Connell's Vikings.
Blake Cashman comes back. That's a big get for the defense. How much was he a factor? How much impact did he have? Did you feel like in this game?
Yeah, it was huge. It was huge. He came back. He played 80% of the snaps, so it was almost up to his full-time workload. But the biggest thing was what he could do in coverage. They blitz him a lot. You saw that at the end of the game where he blitzes on back-to-back snaps. He gets the face mask on Mac Jones that continues the drive, but then he hits Mac Jones on that game-sealing interception to help kind of force that to be an errant ball. And that's the kind of stuff with Cashman. He's so instinctive, speed, burst, sideline to sideline. And you saw the difference from a guy like Ivan Pace. And Ivan Pace is much more of a limited player. He's not as fast sideline to sideline. He's also certainly not somebody who has any length to him. And I think there was a play early where the Jags scored on earlier in that drive where the tight end leaked out and Pace could have tackled him in the flat, just happens to miss him and leads to another 15 yards after the run. That's the kind of stuff you missed when Cashman wasn't in there. And then Cashman quickly came back into the game. So he was great, man. And that's what you expected out of him. This defense was phenomenal. Mac Jones was obviously bad, but you gotta credit the Vikings front for disrupting them as much as they did.
Awesome, Andrew. Appreciate it. We'll see if they can go 3-0 against this bad division next week. It kind of feels like they're playing poorly, but playing just well enough to win at the right time, right? Like the Colts game, the Jaguars, now the Titans. Like if they were playing like this earlier in the year against the 49ers, against the Texans, against the Packers, they wouldn't be winning these games.
No, that's a good point, is that if you needed get right games, if you needed a struggle at any point during the year, this is the time to do it. And look at Chicago is even looking like a team that by the end of November is going to roll right over for you. So I totally agree that you've at least got this game against the Titans, game against the Bears before the Cardinals come to town. And you certainly got to get right by that matchup.
All right, Andrew, appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
Great stuff from Andrew, as usual. I think it's a fascinating question to wonder what the Vikings would be doing right now at 7-2 with mostly good quarterback play from Sam Darnold. Like I said before, I was a game away from saying he's not having a good season. He's having a great season. So maybe we need to give him a little bit more grace than we're giving him for one really bad game against the Jaguars. They escaped it. If he can learn from it, all the better. But I think they would be a lot more tempted, at least right now. I think that's at least the minimum we can say, the fairest minimum we can say, is that they would be tempted right now, if J.J. McCarthy was healthy, to put him in. If they thought he could give you equal to or better quarterback play than what you're getting from Sam Darnold right now, that would be an interesting switch to make right now. Maybe they wouldn't make it at 7-2, but I think it would be tempting at least to consider it. Right now, though, the options with Nick Mullins, Brent Rippon, you're not going to do it at that point. But if you had a healthy J.J. McCarthy, that would be a fascinating question to ask. It's Vikings poetry time on Daily Delivery. The best time? Is that what you said?
The best time.
Yes, you don't share the stage with anyone. It is just you, Keith Rashad. What did you think of the 12-7 Jacksonville Vikings win over Jacksonville. I'm sure you are filled with soul enriching poetry after that one.
That's the only way to express oneself in the wake of a football game.
Yes, let's hear the 1st one.
I'm surprised, right? I occasionally watch. Well, actually, I really don't. But for the purposes of this conversation, I occasionally watch a press conference every now and then.
Yeah,
and I find it surprising that neither the reporters nor the coach speak in recognizable poetic form.
Yeah, nobody else is speaking in haikus but you, haikus as it were. What's your first one?
Total dominance. You had 3 bad interceptions. A ray gun homage.
It's about the only good part of the game, right? Was that Cam Bynum got to do his ray gun homage, his little dance. I guess he'd been planning it for a while. He said on Twitter he was going to do it last week. He got an interception last week, but it got nullified by a penalty. So he's been cooking these up for a while. Now the NFL has gone from like don't even like point at anybody or you're going to get a 15-yard flag to these elaborate like 2-minute dances in the end zone even after a turnover. It's really quite humorous.
It sounds like you don't like it, you crotchety old man.
I do like it. I don't mind it. Royce,
I express myself in poetry. He expresses himself in an homage to the greatest dancer any of us have ever seen.
She just retired, apparently. Did you know that?
Look, you know this. I am not a social media person.
You are not.
I don't care. I don't want to participate.
We might drag you into it. Sounds like it. We might drag you into it.
Well, who knows?
You've got a book to promote. Come on.
Oh, yes, I do. We'll deal with that in due time. When it comes out in February, you should buy it. It's really going to be great. Anyway, I'm not terminally online. I'm not plugged in that way.
No.
Yet somehow I still found out about this person, right? I mean, just the ubiquity of how these things happen sometimes. And so I applaud her for her creativity and willingness to go out there and making a cultural impact that few of us ever have or will make.
Yeah, and Cam Bynum doing his imitation.
But this game had everything, right? This game had everything except for a Vikings touchdown.
For a Vikings touchdown, yeah, that would have been nice. They had plenty of chances. It wasn't like they weren't close. They sure had their chances, but they just didn't do it.
But okay, but here's the thing as well too, right? Because I was thinking about this, and I have been strangely not bothered by this game, right? The reaction, the little bit of reaction that I've been hearing is that people are very much bothered by this game, right? That they're unhappy with the performance and how the Vikings showed up and did not dominate in the way that we perhaps expected for a team that was already bad and lost its starting quarterback. Right? But there have been 100 Vikings games in my lifetime where they lost this one.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Where they, and so for some reason, I cannot work up the vitriol to be worried about something that's an actual victory. Sam Darnold played his worst game in many ways, and they still found a way to win, right? They still pulled out a victory. That's not something that happens with regularity in Vikings land.
No.
They won this game even with the worst performance that you're going to get out of not necessarily that you're always, but that he has displayed this year. So, look, take it for what it's worth, right? Appreciate the win, appreciate the homage, and move on with life because these are human beings doing their thing, and that's just the way it's going to be.
Good teams need to be able to win ugly. Like they played better earlier this season when they were playing better teams. It probably is good for them that they've been able to get away with their not best performances the last 2 weeks against the Colts and Jaguars because those are not very good teams. You're playing Joe Flacco and Mac Jones instead of, Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford. Like the quarterback play has been diminished the last couple of weeks versus what they had been seeing. But yeah, you got to be able to win ugly. They have lost plenty of times. I'll take an ugly win more often than not. What's your second one now?
A rookie kicker saved the Vikings on Sunday. Hades hath frozen.
It was as much as he made all four of those kicks. The whole operation was just kind of dicey, though, right? Like the one of the couple of the snaps were a little weird, and then like one of the kicks like just barely made it through. But yeah, 4 for 4. You can't, we've seen worse. We've seen a rookie kicker for the Vikings miss all of his field goals instead of making all his field goals, like in 2018 with Daniel Carlson. Yeah, maybe Kevin O'Connell's just a better kicker coach than Mike Zimmer ever was.
It was funny to listen to you say that last sentence and visibly see the disbelief in your own voice when you said that, right? That maybe Kevin O'Connell's a better kicker coach. He's certainly nicer than Mike Zimmer, right? Well, he's certainly not somebody who's going to actively try to destroy somebody's career at the podium after a game when he's being grumpy, a grumpy old man who hates everything, like who is without question by the end the worst boss you've ever had.
Yeah.
Right. Just the absolute worst boss you've ever had. That guy, just by the end, he was unbearable. So I'll give you that he doesn't actively try to destroy his kickers. But it's like look, he went 4 for 4. What could possibly go wrong? I think history has demonstrated to us that it's going to be smooth sailing from this point forward.
But I guess what I was saying is, like, I think kickers are kind of like golfers, right? They thrive on confidence, getting into a groove. And if you have a coach that is actively like bad mouthing you or like talking about you in bad ways, like it will destroy your confidence and you will be ruined. Like, remember, I think it was in the preseason in 2018 where Zimmer was mad that Carlson had missed a kick, and so he started going for 2 after every touchdown because he didn't want Carlson to kick in to prove a point. So it's like, I think maybe O'Connell just kind of leaves him alone. I don't know what he does, but their kickers have seemed far less fragile. Let's put it that way since Kevin O'Connell arrived.
In the hierarchy of Vikings coaches that I've hated in my life, I don't think anybody will ever surpass Les Steckel. That was a terrible, terrible year.
Right.
But Mike Tice has always been a solid number 2 for a very long time.
We disagree on that one, but yes, I understand.
You can't come on you can't come on the radio every week and basically give out your game plan like he did, right? You can't institute the quote unquote Randy ratio. We already know that you're going to throw Randy Moss the ball a ton. You don't have to set a benchmark that other teams then
40%
will recognize that you're going to force the ball 40% of the time to Randy. But the more distance we get from Mike Zimmer, the higher up that chart he climbs because those last years were just awful.
They were brutal, and he's not having a great sunset in Dallas. All right, number 3, please.
It's interesting. The concern for the face mask of Mac, but not Sam.
That's a good point. What Cashman got flagged for that? That was the last drive too, right? Like when things were getting kind of dicey before Bynum got the interception before he did his ray gun dance. It might have been the play right before that where it looked like they were going to sack him and put him in a 2nd and long. It was clearly a face mask, but would love to see that called in the Vikings' favor at some point as well. I'm sure that's the point you're making.
Well, I'm just saying, right? Apparently you can smack Sam Darnold about the face and head all you want, and nobody's going to worry about that, right? And by the way, he happens to have his worst game after he gets smacked around in the head a couple times.
Funny.
How interesting.
Very
interesting that all of a sudden the NFL allows you to beat up Sam Darnold about the face and head and his production drops. Boy, that's I'm smelling a conspiracy here.
Yeah, I like the conspiracy. I mean, listen, it was the call was right, but let's call it both ways. That's all I want. Call it both ways is what I'm saying.
That's right. Call it
You're
both
missing a good
ways.
game, ref. You're missing a good game. All right. What's your last one, please?
All right. Jacksonville Jaguars. Barely functional at all. Like John Marthaler.
Are we going to get one John Marthaler reference in every now, just because he got your time slot once.
This is Vikings poetry time, man. This is when it happens, right?
Okay.
This is Vikings poetry time. All I'm saying is if you mess with the poetry bowl, you get the haiku horns.
You mess with the Vikings poetry bowl, you're going to get the haiku horns.
Look, John, you know what? You're on watch.
Like human history is like vast and long. So I'm not going to say that sentence has never, ever been said before, but I'm pretty sure that's a sentence that has never, ever been said in recorded human history before.
It's just more award-winning Vikings poetry. I feel bad for John Marthaler taking Keith's wrath again, just because he took his spot one time in that time slot. Not fair. John, we love you. We'll get you back on the podcast soon. Maybe not on Tuesdays, but maybe sometime soon, because the Loons have another playoff game coming up here in a couple of weeks. Let's finish with the cooler. The Lynx lost two key members of their operation. Katie Smith, a key assistant coach who I thought maybe could be a head coach here at some point. She is leaving to go back to be an assistant at her alma mater, Ohio State. That's an interesting move. So a key assistant lost from Cheryl Reeves' staff. And then Claire Duelius, general manager for the Lynx, also moving on. She is going to be the GM and executive vice president of the Unrivaled League, the 3-on-3 league that was co-founded by Lynx star Nafisa Collier. That begins play in just a couple months here. So a couple key departures for the Lynx. I'm sure they'll find quality hires in their place, but those are two big names coming off a year where the Lynx came just short of their fifth title in controversial fashion. They will need to reload not just on their roster, but on their coaching staff and the front office as well. That will do it for me today. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Should be a good one tomorrow, talking college football with Randy Johnson, talking to Chip Scoggins about a high school program that is using technology to win and be better. Until tomorrow, I am Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Back at it again then.